Hey y'all, I am Chad Scarborough here again. I am at the Texas Trucking Association here at DFW for their monthly meeting, and today we're going to do a roadside commercial vehicle inspection test. And I thought I'd bring you along to show you how that's done appropriately by a DOT officer. We'll see you in there.
We don't have the trailer, so we'll talk about what we would do with the trailer. But in general, just kind of give you a run through of what we do roadside. We find a lot of times what we're looking for on an inspection, what a driver's looking for on a pre-trip, sometimes don't always line together, or maybe the maintenance program. Sometimes we're just looking at different things. So we encourage companies to take part of something like this, or if you have DOT in your area, invite them out for a safety talk. It's free to a company. I know in Midlothian we provide that for the trucking companies, and we'll travel some if we can. Arlington does as well. One of the first things we like to do with drivers is let us show you a level 2 on your yard. It's better to find problems on the yard than roadside, and it goes on paper and it hits points and things like that, right? So we highly encourage these types of things wherever you're at. No DOT unit should tell you no to that. Cities or highway patrol, either one can do that. I do encourage, if you have questions, chunk it out there. One of the two of us can. Yes, sir.
Alan Korea. We're talking about my company does quarterly inspections. From time to time, we have issues, labor issues to the facilities that we go to, and we'll have to bring in people. But down in Houston, we have a really good relationship with some of the DOT, DPS officers that are down by the port, and we'll come to our yard and help us out, and kind of go through the trucks for us. Is that a typical service that maybe some of you guys would be interested in doing off duty or what have you?
So, by DPS rule, we're under an MOU with the state, so we can't have a secondary employment that has anything to do with the trucking industry. That's why it's free if we're going to come do these services.
And we can't do an inspection on it. We can go through stuff and point out pointers and tips and stuff like that. We just can't physically do an inspection because it could be a conflict of interest. I'm giving him a clean inspection, but I'm going to go down the road and stop neighboring company and that's violations or something like that. So, we come out west. Has had us out to his company. We've gone out and done stuff with him and had several trucks there and go through, and we find violations while we're doing stuff with the drivers, show them stuff to look at. So it's a benefit still to come out and take a look at it, even if an inspection's not getting done.
I highly encourage it.
Yeah, and like I said, usually the first time it's a blanket. Let's introduce everybody to everybody and talk about a roadside, and then if we go farther from there, if there's issues within the company, we need to kind of zero in on ELDs or any of those things. We can kind of target the next meetings for something like that. Jason's a past locals president for CVSA. I'm the current vice president, so both of us have connections within the city inspectors pretty much everywhere. If you can't find somebody to help you with something like that, reach out to one of us and we'll know at least where to point you to get that taken care of. Forgot where I was going. So we tell drivers, look, if I'm going to look at it on a level 2 walk around, then your eyes should probably touch those same items on your pre-trip. If your pre-trip's taking 5 minutes, it's probably you're not looking at the right stuff, right? We take 15, 20 minutes on a walk around level 2 just looking at stuff. So that's kind of our encouragement. We don't have a trailer, so we'll start with this guy.
You're talking about stop first, just where to stop and everything.
Sure.
Or I can do that. Before we get into that, just have a conversation with your drivers. Maybe you have, maybe you haven't. But a lot of times the way a DOT officer is going to pull you over may be different than a normal officer. They're going to pull in, turn the lights on, and pull you off on the shoulder. Most times, if somebody's going to stop a semi, whether it's a regular cop or not, they know that it's going to take more room or where to go or stuff like that. So they're going to have an idea there's either a wide shoulder up there, or a lot of times we'll pull up beside the drivers, wait for them to follow, and we go and take the exit and stuff. Give your drivers just a heads up on that if somebody's actually going to stop them, even if it's a regular city cop that's not DOT or sheriff or whatever, they typically know the semi has to have, and they have a location in mind or something that's going to be ahead. So tell them to put the flashers on, acknowledge it, or if somebody pulled up beside, just have them follow. It may not always be the lights come on, especially for us on the freeway. Traffic's everywhere. If I turn the lights on, it just gets worse. So a lot of times just pull up, honk the horn, wave at the driver to follow, and we get off the freeway. So let your drivers know that can happen too. So,
Oh, no, you're fine. Before we get into actually what we're going to look at on the trucks, any questions about procedures or anything along those lines that are out there? Very good. We'll start with the first interaction with the driver. We're going to walk up, introduce ourselves, hopefully let them know we're there for an inspection. Usually, driver, you haven't done anything wrong. You got selected for a roadside inspection. I'm going to pause right there real quick. I get a question from drivers at Safety Talks a lot. Why did the DOT guy pick me? I wasn't doing anything wrong. Why did he pick my truck for the other 30 on the road? The program is set up to be random. Sometimes it's random and sometimes it's not. I like to talk to drivers about what I refer to as a gateway violation. If there's 10 of this truck going down the road and I have to pick one of the 10, what makes this guy stand out from the other 9? That could be your truck is filthy. It's not illegal to have a dirty truck, but if the other 9 are clean, that communicates to me those drivers are doing their maintenance on washing, so they're probably paying attention to the other maintenance. I might select that truck. You got a headlight out, got a mud flat missing. It's not illegal to have a mud flat missing on the tractor. It is on the trailer in Texas. But if the other 9 have both mud flaps and yours doesn't, that's a gateway into an inspection kind of deal. That's what we talk about with them. So make sure the little stuff that we're going to see as it's passing by is taken care of. That could help not get selected for an inspection if that's your goal. We're going to introduce ourselves to the driver. Driver, we're going to do an inspection. Can we get your license, paperwork, logbook, etc.? We had a conversation at the dinner table about paperwork. You do not have to have everything in a binder and paper. It really helps us if it's all organized in a binder and the driver can just reach in the door, hand us a binder, and it's all there.
it's another one of those clues that somebody takes care of what they do. Papers are strung everywhere versus that nice clean binder.
I can't tell you how many times I'm pulling papers. Yes, sir.
You were saying the missing mud flap. You have one missing and one on the truck and you're bobtailing.
On a truck tractor, it's exempt.
In Texas, it is.
Is that just recently changed?
No.
Okay.
So
Truck tractor only.
Right.
Any truck,
Right.
semi-trailer, all of that.
if the truck is missing, the tractor is missing, he's bobtailed, he's missing one mud flap. Is that a violation? In Texas, no, because we exempt truck tractors from the mud flap requirement. Real quick, just so I can get a feel for the audience, how many of us are owners, maintenance, or safety director type? Okay, good. So with paperwork, make sure that the paperwork that they're handing us is current. That's another thing we see quite a bit. But if it's digital, that's fine. If your driver has all those files on his phone, perfectly okay, with the exception of a couple of state permits, maybe 1 or 2, and then any of your hazmat stuff, your shipping papers, bill of lading for HM is going to have to still be on paper. So just make sure they know where that's at. They can hand it to us. We're going to get the license, med card, any of that stuff, and then we get to the logbook. There's about 8 exemptions to the ELD. If you're running one of those, make sure your drivers are familiar with what exemption they meet so they can communicate that. They're looking at some changes to the pre-2000 exemption that could be coming. CVSA is kind of working on that. But we're going to ask them if they have an ELD, do you have your instruction manual, transfer guide, and malfunction guide? There's 3 documents they have to have with every ELD. That's a major, major issue right now roadside. They can be paper in the book, or they can be stored digitally on the device. What we commonly hear is, I have no idea. I don't know where they're at. And sometimes I'll open the book and they're first thing in the book that I see, but the driver doesn't know that. If I see it in the book, they're going to get credit for it. But if it's stored on the device and they don't know how to go find it, we're not going to go searching for it. So they're going to draw 3 violations roadside for that one question.
Can you repeat those 3 things? Sorry.
There's got to be a user manual, a malfunction guide, and a transfer guide.
The user manual is the actual book for the device on how to operate it. The malfunctions is what to do if it malfunctions. What do I have to do? I've got to contact my boss. I've got to start paper logs. I've got to report this to the ELD. Whatever your company kind of sets it up, or your ELD manufacturer, has to be carried in there separately. and then the instruction card on how to transfer.
And sometimes those are all combined into one or two documents. That's okay too. Next thing we're doing is driver. Can you transfer your hours via web service? Inside Texas, DPS holds us to web service transfer only. They don't let us do the email or the fax or the
Bluetooth.
the secure
USB.
thumb drive. Yeah. Outside of Texas, that may be an option, but in Texas, we will not accept those. So the second common thing is, officer, here's the device. I don't know how to do that. Can you do it? We chuckle, but it's
80 to 90%.
yeah,
say that.
it's really, really common. I actually praise drivers when they say, okay, yeah, let me do this real quick. I'm like, if I had a reward to give you, I would, because it's refreshing to us to see the guys that know how to work their stuff. So,
Easy question. Is there an ELD that you guys particularly like? Is there one that you don't?
for me, no.
No, I haven't. I check a lot of them. They're all work pretty pretty good. Nothing's stand out. I mean, we have some that we see more, but not really.
Okay.
It seems like recently, the last 6-8 months, I don't know if it's software updates, all of them seem to be having weird, quirky little issues.
Yeah.
Stuff's transferring different than it's on the screen. And that's on us to know. If it looks funny on the transfer, we've got to verify it, right? We got to have an interview with that guy, and then we got to look on the screen and make sure. Yes, sir.
Are you all aware of the issue that we've been having with Fleetmatics, the Verizon ELDs?
I don't think so.
So the issue we found was some of our drivers were running Houston to Dallas Fort Worth on the I-45 corridor, and it was shutting the ELDs down. And it shut the ELD down if it goes a certain amount of time without having connectivity. So come to find out, somebody screwed up Verizon and put it to us in writing, which we gave to FNC to say, and they said that Verizon was sunsetting their 3G and all that, and they didn't have enough coverage for all the 5Gs and the LTE towers.
Gotcha. Did FNCSA give you all a exemption for paper?
They told us what to do for the environment.
So they basically said they're not an exemption.
So please have that education with your driver, however that is. If it's on hire, if we've never talked about that at the company, how to transfer via web service. It's generally pretty simple. Some of them are a little complicated, but that's what that transfer guide is supposed to walk them through. Click this button, and then it'll get to a point they get our code. We give it to them. We pull that ELD file down on E-Rods and go through it. Does anybody here have their drivers use an ELD that's on a cell phone or like an iPad type tablet? Quite a few. Please make sure these guys aren't taking that cell phone and just laying it on the dash, laying it on the seat.
It actually has to be mounted.
Needs a cradle now. It has to be attached.
Yes, has to be fixed and visible to the driver while driving. So if it's just laying loose, sitting in a cup holder,
Another violation. Same thing though with your corded devices. Some of your older Omnitracs and stuff like that. The cord has to be long enough. It has to come out to the outside of the cab. So don't zip tie everything up under the dash. We can't get it pulled out to the outside of the cab.
just some simple right off the bat. We haven't even started the inspection. I know we spent a lot of time on that, but there's a lot of violations to be drawn right there at that interview with the driver that can simply be avoided by training. It's all about the culture of the company. You know, do you have a culture of safety and training and education? Are you having DOT come out and work? If you have that one really bad crash and you're in a courtroom defending your program or your company, that's a big deal with a jury. Is what is the culture of this company? If you've had DOT come out and do safety talks every quarter with your company or twice a year, whatever, you know, those types of things aren't the fix, but that builds a culture. Because a lot of I have to beg companies in my cities to let me come on their property and do that. Most of them think we're in there to spy or something weird. It's weird, but they don't want to let us in. You know, it's the guys here that do, but a lot of them don't. So from there, we're going to start our equipment. We verified everything with that. We're going to get into starting to check the equipment of the vehicle. First step, we try and follow the 37 steps in the CBSA Level 1 as best we can. Some of us get a little bit out of order on that. But as long as certain things are being done at the right times, it's okay. I like to start with the gauges and everything in the cab and the ABS lights. I'm going to check the tractor and the trailer ABS first. I think it's step 7-ish, 8-ish. Yeah. We moved the trailer check up because some of the newer trailers, if the air pressure is down below 80, 50, it will set that ABS out on the trailer, and it was drawing a false violation. So I do it right off the bat. Air pressure's full on both tanks. That way I don't have that issue for me. Driver,
He's saying the ABS, those are 3 violations right there. They're not checking those properly. So there's a lot of violations listed for ABS light indicators that aren't working properly. So have your drivers checking those properly. There's a bulletin on CBSA. It's easily accessible. It tells you everything about the ABS system on there. You don't have to be a member or anything. You just log in there, go to inspections and bulletins on their website. You can print it off and it'll walk you through it. But we get a lot of violations off ABS lights.
I was hoping we had a trailer to show you the trailer side of that, because that's generally where that problem comes in. When driver turn your key on, it's going to do a function check. We're looking for if it's got a trailer attached and it's newer than a 1, you're going to have 2 lights on the dash, one for the truck, one for the trailer. We want to see both of those come on, 2 to 3 seconds, and they're going to go off. We're going to turn the key off, do that cycle again, and watch the trailer. That trailer ABS light needs to cycle with the key. If the driver's saying when I hit the brake, the light comes on, there's a problem in the system. And that problem exists with your tractor, not with your trailer. The truck is supposed to supply constant power to the trailer. That's why the key cycle is going to happen. If it doesn't, for some reason, we're going to disconnect the trailer, plug it back in. That should interrupt that constant power, and it should cycle at that point while the key's on in the tractor. What's happening if you're pushing the brake and you're getting a cycle, there's an emergency circuit for the ABS in the trailer, and that runs off the stop lamp circuit. So when he's hitting the brake lights coming on, it's triggering that ABS to cycle. So usually it's a fuse or power issue in your tractor. If we do all of this and the trailer never activates at all, then you've got an issue on the trailer side most likely. Then the light on the trailer needs to say ABS of some variety. I don't care if it's a sticker or Sharpie, it is supposed to be labeled. Going from there, if I have a bobtail, I'm going to go ahead and pump the brakes down, check low air and all that stuff right now. If I have a trailer, I'll do that at the end when we do the tractor protection valve, let all the air bleed down at one time. Fire extinguisher and triangle is going to be my next check. Those seem simple, but my goodness, do we get a lot of violations for fire extinguisher and triangle. I've probably had 3 in the last month. When I'm looking at an empty fire extinguisher, I ask the driver if he's put out any fires. If your fire extinguisher good, he says no and yes, and that thing's empty. He looked, saw it was there, didn't check the gauge. So make sure we're checking that. Make sure it's latched. The fire extinguisher's got to be secured to the vehicle so it doesn't go flying around in a crash. Anything on triangle?
No, it just says, fire extinguisher latches available, but triangle just need to be there.
Yeah, triangle's there. They need to be in a box.
It does say, technically in the standard, it says it's got to be in a hard plastic box.
Yeah. I'm not going to say you won't draw that violation from somebody. It is technically wrong. But if they're loose, like in the box under the sleeper, that's technically a violation. So just be mindful. We're going to check seat belt, seat securement, make sure all that. We're going to tug on your steering wheel. Make sure it locks in a tilt. If it's tilt, it's got to lock in one of the positions. I see occasionally get a nut loose on the steering wheel where you can move it. I'm going to go ahead and check your steering lash at that point while I'm standing there and the engine's running. I'm going to move the wheel. Usually you can see there's a chart in the regs, one for violation, one for out of service. But if you got play in the steering wheel, it's a good idea to measure that. If you want to know how we check that specifically, catch me at the end and I'll walk you through that very specifically.
That's about it in the cab. Yeah.
Wipers, washer fluid. Washer fluid is what, 30-40%?
Yeah, probably.
You would be surprised how many drivers don't know how to turn on their washer fluid. I've got to tell them, sir, on this Freightliner, it's the outer ring, not the middle. Make sure your drivers know that. So, just got to squirt, hit the windshield, wipers got to wipe. We're going to get to the outside, so we'll move around here in the front. Yes.
With the fire extinguisher and the triangles, do you also need fuses? Those required?
Yes,
That's an issue.
it is an issue. It used to be very, very common to draw no spare fuse violations. That was one of the major violations. So that's starting to die off because most of these newer trucks use circuit breakers. If your truck uses fuses, you do need spare fuses for that type. If there's a problem. So it could be the mini fuses, the maxi fuses. There's a whole variety of them. A lot of guys got in the habit of going to Walmart and just buy a variety fuse box and they'd stick it in the truck, call it good. Well, that's not always good.
It's not, if you're getting violations on it, it's not an automatic you have to have spare fuses. You don't really have to have it until there's a problem. If you have a headlight out, fix it. You stop your headlights out, you can't fix it. That's when the spare fuse violation is supposed to be listed. It's not just supposed to be officer walks up there, stands on the doorstep and goes, do you have spare fuses? You read the regulation, that's not really a violation if you actually read through the statute. It's only supposed to be a violation if there's a problem that a fuse would fix. So just be cautious of that as you're looking at inspections and stuff that come in with that. It's not an automatic violation for not having it.
Something that we do when we onboard a new driver, we look at their truck and what fuses are needed for that truck. We'll go out and we'll buy those empty pill bottles and we'll fill it up with the fuses. We'll glue the lid and give it to them. So to keep it in the truck at all times.
And these things, my safety personnel in the audience, this is where your job is critical. We are not infallible. I mean, we both do, we think, pretty decent inspections, but we still make mistakes. And we see other officers that make mistakes. If we know that person, we'll generally call them and say, hey, but sometimes it's another state, whatever. We can't force that guy to fix a mistake. Through the CVSA side, we have a big passion for standardization, uniformity, so the driver gets the same thing here as he does in New Mexico, from Texas DPS, wherever. But mistakes happen. Bad violations get listed. The safety director or person in your company that's checking these inspections needs to know how to go look at the reg and dig into the weeds like we do and see, okay, yeah, it looks right, but when we dive into the weeds, is it still right? Because sometimes when you get into the weeds, that takes you out of that violation. And we may not know that, and you may know that. I've been educated a lot on data cues from companies. I did it wrong, I got a data cue and got my hand slapped. I'm like, I'm not gonna make that mistake again. We don't like being told we're wrong, but sometimes we are. On that note, is there anybody here that does not know what a data cue is? Don't be shy. Good. Okay. There's a lot that don't. Let's look at the front of the tractor. We're going to always work
around this corner. Just
yeah.
A group here.
We're going to always work counterclockwise around your truck. So we're going to start at the front, go all the way down the right, back up the truck or trailer on the left. So I'm standing here looking at the front of your truck. Driver's going to have all the lights on. Where did my driver go?
You want lights?
Yeah, if you don't mind. So we're going to, yeah. We're going to look at the clearance and ID lights. These are obviously mounted right, so your ID lights got to be 6 to 12 inches apart. You see a lot of these guys with the fancy decorative thing up there, and they'll have like the LED strip, and they're all really, really close, or they're in some V shape or something like that. That's obviously going to be a violation. So we want to see all three on. There's no standard right now on LED lights to how many diodes can be out. That's coming. They're really, really, really close to that. I suspect next year we'll see that. But right now, if one diode is burning and we can see it burning, that light is good. Unless we have a lumens meter and all of that. So we're gonna look here. We've got two headlights. We're gonna say driver. We need to check your upper beam. He's gonna bright lights. We're good. We're gonna do left blinker, right blinker, and then we're gonna do four-way flashers. Why do we not check the blinkers with the four-way flashers? Anybody got a guess? There we go, separate circuits. I had one Monday. Driver had a turn signal out on the trailer. He's like, well, they worked when I checked them this morning. I asked him how he did it. It was with four-way flashers. Two separate circuits. So make sure we're checking those independently. Not worried about your fog lights if those are out. I am going to look at your reflector on the side of the light. If you can see, there's an orange reflector that's the front corner markers. Some lights are built in where that light's visible, as long as it's built in. Some of the older Peterbilts that have the long nose Pete's, they take that assembly off and change that, and you'd lose that reflector. So if you have an owner operator that likes to customize their truck, make sure we're not killing those side reflectors when we're adding anything new. Front bumper. You don't see it a lot, but occasionally we'll have a blowout or some damage where we'll lose this whole corner of a bumper. It's got to be a bumper with the width. So if that piece of the bumper or the whole bumper is missing, you're going to draw a front bumper violation. So just be aware of that. Anything else?
If you have older fleet or any, most of you probably have newer fleets, but you start changing headlights out, make sure you're putting approved headlights in. They got to be stamped on the lens, the DOT SAEs. We've seen a lot of replacement headlights, and they're burning the lenses and getting water in them and all kinds of stuff. So make sure that they're approved headlights.
So before I move off, I'm going to kind of take a quick look at the condition of our windshields. On this right side, you can see you've got a small stone chip, like a circular crack on there. If you have that, the standard for that is 3/4 of an inch or roughly a quarter. If you put a quarter up there and it covers it, you're good. If it goes beyond that, we're going to have a violation for bad windshield. On this right side, we have a crack that's coming off and it's kind of doing its dance up there. So you can have a crack, you just can't have two cracks that intersect each other. So that crack would be okay. But if something happens and another one crawls up and tees into it, that's when you draw a windshield violation on that windshield. Everything else up here would be great. We'll pretend we're on this side. So we're going to get to the front tire. I usually do open the hood and check all of that before we start checking our brakes and going under. This will be one of the last things I do. We're going to check our tire. You know, kick it, hit it, however you check pressure. Okay. Looking for our 4/32 tread depth. If there's any wear inner or outer from an alignment issue, you see it a lot on the inner where if we don't open the hood, we can't see it, but you'll see steel ply exposed when you got some kind of weird alignment problem going on. Obviously, make sure this isn't a off-road tire or anything like that, which I don't think we're going to see. We're going to put hands on every lug nut. Here lately, it seems like we're seeing more and more of this. You know, we catch it just by seeing. We can kind of look at the lug nut and tell just by doing them all the time. If you see what I like to call dry powdery rust, like a bright orange rust creeping out from under a lug nut, it could just be that that's been on there a while, but usually if that rust is showing up, there's something moving. If it's loose by hand, then it's going to draw a violation. We're going to check all of our wheel surface for any signs of cracks. So any crack hole to hole longer than 3 inches, stud to hand hole would draw an out of service violation there. If you're running disc wheels, they're very common on the tractors anymore. We're going to try and look in these hand holes or inside here as best we can to look at the condition of the rotor, look for rust, cracks, any evidence of metal on metal contact for that. On the driver's side, we have our steering gearbox. It's got a pitman arm that comes off and connects to the steering link. So drivers often wonder, why are they having us rock the steering wheel? We say, driver, rock your steering wheel right and left real hard. We're looking for movement between that output shaft and that pitman arm. Any movement there is out of service. I mean, if you can see movement, it might be small. It's going to draw an out of service violation. Again, in the spline of that gear, look for that dry powdery rust there. If that's got movement planned, it's going to develop rust inside those teeth, and it's going to eventually ooze out the front. So if you see that, have your shop or your fleet, whoever's taking care of your maintenance, hey, check that shaft force on that. We're going to try and put hands on any steering component arm, a drag link, a tie rod bar, anything we can. We're looking for hand pressure. We're going to have, while he's rocking the wheel, we're also looking at the U-joints on the spring. We're looking for any looseness. Sometimes you'll see those springs shifting, or you'll actually see the whole axle slide front and back on the spring. So kind of an all-encompassing, we're looking at that as we're looking here. We'll have the driver So let me get everybody kind of step up close real quick while we're here. So we're going to look at everything brake related from the hose coming out of the frame to the dill. We're looking for chafing. So these fender skirts are pretty common on most newer trucks. If you look at this skirt, it's dirty everywhere, right? And then you see this one shiny spot up here. So if we bring that down, what's that shiny spot hitting? It's hitting our brake hose. If you want, come look at it. So you've got rubbing on this brake hose, which is exposing the plate. So obviously that's going to be we're going to catch that, and that's going to be a violation roadside. But and there's in the out of service criteria, there's levels of exposure or damage to the hose that would determine whether that's out of service or not. So when your driver's doing this pre-trip, when you're teaching this to your fleet, these are the things our eyes look for. As I'm looking, we don't care if this is dirty, right? But if I see no shiny spot but one, well, what's causing that? So I'm going to look. So we're going to look down and find what's causing that. That's a result of that. So we're going to check that the chamber's tight, no bolts are loose. We're going to mark the push rod, both sides, driver, push and hold the brake. We're going to measure those push rods and check that the brakes are within compliance. We're also listening for leaks up here. So a diaphragm leak up here is going to be a defective brake, which on a steer tire will get us into some issues. Make sure that you have whoever's doing your maintenance, make sure our chamber sizes are the same everywhere, but primarily on the front. Mismatched chamber size, so a 30 and a 24 will draw an out of service on the steer. That seems to be, I've seen more of it this year than I have ever before in my time. Usually you have a problem, you get a roadside mechanic come out, all they had was a 24, they throw it on to get the guy back to the yard. Unfortunately, they have to run into DOT between wherever in the yard. We see it now, we got out of service points, right? So just some things to look at there. We're going to look at hoses and brake components really, really, really close all the way down your truck and trailer. That's an important, very important item on the truck. So these are things we're going to see. On that side, the only thing different over there is generally up on the firewall, you've got a little manifold block with all the plastic tubes from different air systems going in there. Those are pretty common to leak, so we'll kind of tune into that a little bit. Got anything else up here, Jason? No. Moving back, if you have an air tank here or something like that, we're going to look at air tank fuel system. We're checking that the cap is tight or it's present. We're going to look at, make sure that the fuel tank has its certification. We see occasionally aftermarket tanks or homemade tanks or whatever that don't have any certification. And then as best we can, we're going to look for any signs of an exhaust leak anywhere we can see exhaust present. So if you see black soot charring a pipe with it running, get your mechanic to kind of take a look at that. Markings. So there's a lot of controversy on markings. We need a company name and a DOT number. That's all I care about roadside. You don't need TXTA, the old number system we used to have. Company name, DOT. Does need to say US and DOT. You see a lot of people put the pound sign, hashtag, whatever you want to call it, in the number sign in there. Technically, that is not correct. It could draw a violation. You're going to get guys that give it to you. You're going to get some that don't. If you have that in your fleet, I would encourage just take it off so you don't run into that. Yeah.
There's no VIN number required.
Nope.
Now, some states may want to. I think Tennessee and California may require different stuff. We're just talking FedRegs and basically Texas here for now. Some states might require a little different. Be cautious of that if you're interstate. Of something you might have in another state an issue there. I think Tennessee requires some stuff for sure.
Now, I mean, with the cost of trucks and trailers, theft is an issue. You know, if a lot of companies make their unit number part of the VIN, right? The last of the VIN or the last of the license plate, whatever. That's not a terrible idea if we're looking for a stolen truck. If we run the plate in our car and we see that those don't match, so having the VIN number is good, but it's not necessarily required.
So the numbers don't have to be a specific size?
Yes.
Of the VIN or the DOT?
No, the DOT.
DOT.
And under state law, there is a 2-inch. Under Texas law, there's a 2-inch requirement. On the federal side, there's no standard for visible from 50 feet contrasting color. So if you're running intra-state only, then the state law is going to prevail, and you're going to be more held to that 2-inch standard. But if you're an interstate carrier, then the federal law is going to be more prevailing. So visible at 50 feet, contrasting color is really the standard you're going to be held to. As we're moving back, we're going to look at your mirror. Make sure your mirror is present, not shattered, and it can be seen through. Windows. These look okay. It's Texas. It gets really, really hot in August, and July, and all the rest of the years. So we see a lot of window tint in Texas. I feel terrible for the driver because it's hot, but the standard for window tint in a commercial vehicle is 70% on the side windows, and then you've got a 2 inches on the top, 1 inch down the side, the plane level with the top of the steering wheel on the bottom. That bracket can be tinted, anything inside that cannot. So if you have owner operators or in your fleet, if you're tinting these things to 40, 50%, know that that's in Ellis County. The troopers will send out a helicopter and the tactical unit, and they'll chase you down. That's a big deal for the troopers in that area. They will hunt you down for window tint. So just be mindful of that. Moving back here, we're going to kind of take a quick look at the back of the cab. If our brake hoses are connected to a trailer, we're going to look at the requirements for markings back here. So the only thing we have on the back of the cab is your corner markers up in the top. So we have them present. The standard for that is white strips, 12 inches. Here we've got a combination of red and white. The standard reads white, but in general, if you're communicating that I'm a big truck, we're likely to give it to you on that. You will find somebody somewhere that will write that violation and say those strips are not white. The standard says white. That is true, but just be aware of that. We're going to take a look at these hoses, especially when they're connected to a trailer, for the same things we did up there. If this hose, show them on the 2 minutes there. Oh, sorry. If this hose is connected to the trailer, these are awesome. If you're using these protectors, that's great. A lot of folks don't. If it's sitting on the catwalk like that, I want to see what's that catwalk doing to that hose. I'm going to pick it up and I'm going to look at it and see if it's caused any damage. Nothing illegal about the hose resting on a catwalk or anything else, as long as it's not causing damage. So when we talk about hose chafing, any section reduction, so when this hose goes from round to flat, that becomes a violation, and there's levels within that. If you have a chafing violation because it's sitting here rubbing on the catwalk and you fix it, hasn't got into the ply, does not become out of service, you readjust, put a new spring on, that corrects it. You don't have to replace or repair that hose at that point. So if you can fix the chafing before it gets out of service, there's a guidance question in the CSRs that says that is no longer a violation if it's been repositioned. So you can get that violation roadside, but safety or whoever in your company needs to know, I need to data queue that because that's the case. Glad hands, we're going to have, at this point where driver hit the brakes, we're listening for air leaks and movement here, and we're listening for leaks in the glad hand. Not super common, but it does happen. So in here, I being kind of a thorough guy, I'm going to get up in here and I'm going to look at all of this stuff as best I can. I encourage drivers on a pre-trip, get in this area, look down in here, look at these hoses. These are really common to chafe on the differential function.
These hoses even here are all wrapped up in these
If you want, you can come look at what he's talking
and
about.
stuff, and they're going to be a problem and stuff. That stuff your driver needs to catch ahead of time. This side, they're wrapped up in this bubble. They're going to chafe over time and be a problem.
And
So what would you do? Put some kind of protector around it?
you can wrap it with like a
something
big,
to hold it away from those,
Yeah.
and where it's not going to continue to rub. Because the vibration of that truck going down the road just keeps those two hoses rubbing together. It's going to cause a problem.
and like these are zip tied over, which is great, but plastic will eventually get hot in the heat and break. And that's when you'll see these drift over and they'll rest up against this differential and they start rubbing.
Those spacers?
Yeah.
That are keeping them apart?
Yeah, and hose to hose rubbing can also cause a chafing violation. So just be mindful. We're looking for that. So somebody in your company, whether it's a driver or your maintenance, they need to be looking for that as well.
Even just a level 2, I find a lot of hoses, even with the trailer on here, just on these back ones. I walk around and look. They can pick all that up on a pre-trip and avoid that.
So from here, my eyes are going to go to this spring hanger bracket. You got them at several points going back. I'm usually just glancing at it, but I'm looking for that dry powdery rust around these threads and the bolts. If I see something that indicates that bolt has had movement, I'm going to put my hands on it. I want to see, is it actually loose right now? Because if it is, it's going to be a violation. I'm going to try and look down the center of your tires. Us and drivers both are really bad about walking around, taking our foot or hand or bat, whatever, and we thump the 4 tires, good, we're gone. We look at the treads, we forget to look in here. We see a lot of plugs in here, sidewall plugs, which are no-go, and we'll see a lot of bulges on these insides. I don't know why. Or you've picked up a rock and it's stuck in there. So make sure we're taking a look in here. We try and look down the inside edge here if we can. I'm going to look at this drive shaft as best I can. If you're having your truck towed and your tow truck is removing your drive shaft to tow it, make sure somebody is putting Loctite back on those bolts when they put it together. We see a lot of U-joint bolts that are loose when we're under them. Camshaft?
No, right here on the suspension bushings.
Yes. So this suspension bushing on this spring here, if that bushing is gone or these bolts are loose, a lot of times we'll see that when they pull up and stop and that suspension shifts. We'll see that movement. We're going to hone in on that.
Question.
Yep.
Nope, over there.
Chris,
Yes.
I want to remind everybody, their drivers, I drove for 40 years, they can catch a lot of this stuff going down the road. You can put that thing on the side, you can stop out there and fix it. I was coming through the canyon a while ago, and I'm like, where's Chris and Jason here? You'd have thought this guy was a trick driver. The tractor's over here, his trailer's over here. What had happened, somebody had drove that thing over a curb or something and knocked all that out of place. That driver killed. So, you know, if you get on, if that driver leaves your yard, if he's checking his mirrors like he should, he'll catch that thing running off track.
Yep.
So, and it happens more than you know.
So, and I know it seems like we're looking at a lot, but we are. Our job is to make sure this truck is safe going down the road. And the driver's not going to catch all this. They're just not. But we want to expose them to what we look for. Our eyes just go to things. So if they can understand that, then they will do a better pre-trip. They're probably never going to be as thorough as we are. But we're trying to just get them to be aware. We're going to look at your brake cans down here and make sure that there's no non-manufactured holes, rust holes, cracks on this park brake side. Driver hit the brake. We're going to look at the movement. We're going to listen for that mechanical sound. Most brakes in good working order are relatively quiet, but if they hit the brake and you hear this, okay, I've got a problem. There's something way out of whack on that brake. And that'll lead that level 2 into a level 1 real quick. And then we're going to get under there and try to figure out what's going on. Okay. So back here again, tires, lugs, hubs, all of that's the same. We're going to look at all of your fifth wheel mounting bolts and the kingpin mounting bolts on the trailer. Make sure nothing's loose or anything there.
Their suspension bags can't be deflated.
Anybody run 331 or cryogenic trailers at all? Some of the cryogenics trailers, when you open that back door, it sets the brakes and deflates them. So make sure that the driver, some inspectors don't know that, so they'll hit them for defective brakes. Make sure they know that. Checking the lights at the back here and the back of the trailer. We're going to look for turn signals again, 4 ways independent. We're looking for brake lights. We're looking for 3 ID lights, and this is fine as long as the grip come on. We don't care about a license plate back here or a license plate light. And then reverse light, that gets missed a lot. We are going to have the driver put it in reverse, the light goes on. It can have a buzzer, but that's not regulated. Down here, we got the lower truck tractor DOT tape. You either have to have it on your mud guards or a strip across the bottom of the cab. You have the option where you want to put it. So if you take these off or these come off and you're not putting them back on, make sure you run a strip across the bottom of the cab. Going down the trailer, everything's pretty much the same. We're going to look at the same components around and then come back up this left side. So I know we took a really, really deep dive, but that's how our minds work. The tractor protection valve, last thing we do, driver, we're going to have you unhook the flat hands with the brakes set or brakes released, and then we're going to let that air bleed out. The trailer should shut off immediately, and then somewhere usually around 50 psi, that tractor valve kicks in. We're going to have to press the brake and listen for any air leak. If there's air coming out of either end of the hose, we've got a problem, and that's when I'll go ahead and check my low air warning light and buzz like that. I know we went really deep off into that. Has that drawn any questions or really concerned for my mental stability for keeping all this in my head? Yes, sir.
Our fleet is dump trucks, so for the tape, what would be the requirements on the rear side?
You only have to have reflectors on the lower left and right corner, on the sides on the corner.
On the rear?
Red
So
reflectors.
a straight truck has no tape requirement at all.
Oh,
A lot of guys do it to be.
You can use the reflective tape. But you
oh,
only have to have one reflector on each lower corner. And on the sides.
How long does the strip on the back of the cab have to be on the
Full width.
If you're taking the lower off. One thing on the dump trucks is about 50-50 we see is a lot of them don't have any type of clearance lamp. So the lights get sucked up into the middle down here because there's nowhere to put them, but you don't have any clearance lamp. You do have to have that.
so we can. Oh, clearance lamp on top.
Yeah, it can be a top or down on the bottom, but it's got to be. You have to have some kind of lamp that identifies your outer corner.
What's the height from the ground? Just maybe 15 to 16.
These setups are good on lights because all the functions are separate, but a lot of them will have just that one bulb, like what's in here. You have one bulb that does all your functions: tail light, turn, hazard, stop. If that is what you run and that one bulb goes out or it gets unplugged, you just drew 4 violations off that one bulb. Does anybody know what Ops 14 is? Operations Policy 14 with CVSA? If you email me and I'll send it to you if you don't have it. That's the guidance for us as inspectors of how we report violations roadside. We want this to all be standardized across the country. That's why CVSA has Operation Policy 14 and 15. That's a guide to inspectors to make sure you get the same inspection, same report everywhere. The downside, if there is one to that, is we do it the same everywhere based on that document. CVSA is comprised of enforcement and industry. We all get together and make those rules together. So if you want a voice in that, I would encourage you to get involved. But that document is going to tell us how to put the violations on a report, whether we do tires grouped together, whether we do them separate, how we do lighting, all of that spelled out there. So sometimes you think we're being mean roadside by listing all these things that seem very, very minor. But if we're doing our job right, we have to follow that guidance. We've signed an agreement with the state saying we are going to follow the guidance. The state has signed an agreement with the Fed saying they're going to follow it. So that's why sometimes you see some of these multiple things listed when it's one item like that. It's not because we're wanting to beat up on your points. Believe me, we don't. But we are being told that's the right way to do it.
That's the only way we can get standardization across the nation.
So
honestly, it's listed properly.
I understand. It sounds like we're going.
We see it so much. I'll stop one that was stopped a month ago. Goes, well, such and such didn't say anything about that, or they just told me that and didn't list it, or that's where the issues come in, and we start to get a difference between agencies. If everybody lists things the way they're supposed to be and follow that policy, we would all be the same. It makes it easier on you guys. That's on our side to try to push that.
Yeah, and I believe in my heart, everybody standing here is running a really solid fleet. You wouldn't be here if you didn't care about safety. You wouldn't. But we have those carriers out there that don't, and that's our only way to ensure that they try and fix that is to put it on paper. But if I'm treating that guy different than I'm treating the folks standing here, then we're doing a disservice to the industry as a whole. We have to treat every inspection the same. It seems robotic, but that's the only way to accomplish this goal in uniformity across the country.
But just remember that too. You guys have drivers. Just remember you got the drivers do everything they can do to do it right. You have the average driver
below average drivers. Same thing happens with inspectors, guys. Just watch your inspections. There's great inspectors out there. There's guys that do it every day, hardcore all day. You have guys that do it part-time and they do 32 trucks a year. And you're not going to be as good doing 32 trucks a year, so you may not see some of the inspections be different, or be cognizant of that as well. So watch the inspections coming in, not saying that they're doing it bad because they intend to. They may just not be as trained and stuff. Just know there's different levels of education in inspectors.
And I think that this tractor,
Unless you're in a state that has 2 lanes.
we're here. But
Yeah.
we run big
That it would, yeah, on a straight truck, yes.
If you have an Forester combination that only has one plate on the front, you're not required to get more plate on the side.
And if anybody runs something very specialized in your I'm not running off that. So we're going to be here to fill any questions.
We know we're kind of at 1 o'clock. We also have the ELD. He said he transferred. I'll pull it up over here if somebody wants to see how it transfers. It's kind of hard for everybody stacked around a computer one time. So we'll stay here a few minutes too. If somebody wants to see some of that stuff, we'll cover that too. But it gets people out from you to go as well.
Thank you guys. I hope y'all took something with you.